Welcome back to Scratching the Surface. My name is Justin, aka Money.
And my name is Cody, aka Junes.
And guys, thank you for tuning in. We hope your October was great. And speaking of great, Junes, what are we going to be covering today?
1978 Halloween, John Carpenter, one of the best in the horror genre and highly influential for any of these slasher movies that came out after it. And I'm really excited to talk about this one today, Money. I know this is your bread and butter, so I'm excited to hear you talk about it and for the people to get a chance to hear as well.
Yeah, if anyone's out there that actually hasn't gotten into Halloween yet or Carpenter or Zombies films, those two directors being involved with this franchise, I highly recommend it. Obviously, if you're just a slasher genre kind of killer horror fan already, I don't know how you haven't seen any of these movies, or the franchise, I should say. But this movie in particular is a lot of people's favorites. We'll be getting to scores later at the end, June, so I'm curious to see where your head's at. And if you obviously have anything to nitpick, and if there's anything in this movie that kind of degrades itself, I'm curious and open to your thoughts. So, guys, also before we start, please check us out on TikTok, YouTube, um, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the other main media streaming platforms at Scratching the Surface 100. We post almost every day on there, and we're glad to be pumping out an episode as Halloween 1978. Haddonfield, Illinois. Could you imagine yourself there, like like growing up, and then like you always think about like living in a universe. Like imagine just being like a kid now in Haddonfield, and then like all this stuff transpires.
It'd be
Do you like
legendary.
imagine that?
Be legendary. And something that this film does so well, I think, is it kind of paints that suburban lifestyle,
Oh yeah,
and then
yes.
putting a killer in that suburb setting is what really spooks you out a little bit because we all grew up in that setting for the most part. So having a killer on the loose that was raised in a suburban environment and then comes back to kill people is just it's fantastic. So I love how you say that. I mean, it'd be legendary if you lived there.
I know they do a pretty damn good job, especially in like the later movies, the last trilogy we got. Like they do a really good job, like being festive with their setting and having that like fall October environment. But um, no, yeah. So to kick it off, I loved the POV we get right away in this movie. It's like the eyes of the killer of little Michael um, when he's a kid in Haddonfield. And he basically we get our first kill, I think, I don't know, within the first 5 to 10 minutes. He kills Judith, his sister, which in the remake of Zombies film, that's a lot more gory,
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
compared to this original version. But you get to see the eyes of him through the mask that he's wearing. And basically, he goes outside, and you see that famous scene, kind of him just holding the knife with his parents there and stuff, and just confused. Um, I couldn't imagine that if like I had a kid and they just killed, you know, my daughter or whatever and his sister. But yeah, I don't know. Like I think you love those kind of POV scenes, Junes, of the killer stalking, if you will.
When it's
Um,
done right, absolutely. And this is one of
Absolutely.
the first really true POVs we've seen in the horror genre for the most part. And the way Carpenter goes about it with the camera work is really impressive. It's just fun to follow those characters as they're going towards their kills. And
Mhm.
like in a violent nature this year, having so much POV was beautiful because you're working your way up towards the kill from the killer's view. It just heightens the suspense and the tension as they work towards their victim. That is so prevalent in this movie. You see it time and time again as Michael's slowly stalking his way to his victims. And my God, that opening sequence, by the way, the title sequence, I mean, you know what you're getting into the moment you see that title sequence with the pumpkin slowly zooming in.
Yep.
It's fucking so beautiful and gorgeous. And people, when you watch this for the first time, for people that haven't seen it, you're automatically bought into the film the moment you see that title sequence. It's really, really incredible. And John Carpenter, he's a fucking maestro of directors. And we love The Thing. Did a great job with that one. And then here it's just a fun time. But that opening, I just fucking love.
Yeah, their credits are amazing. I think they actually get better as the franchise goes on too, in my opinion. But we get introduced to Loomis, Loomis. He is a character in these films. Um, I think he gets a lot of hate. Like people, I think just kind of get annoyed with him. But I can understand why. Like I don't know if you have an opinion on it, but like I think he kind of gets a little annoying later down the road. But I think he's, back in that era, big trench coat, guy with a goatee, and he's kind of older and he's just hunting down Michael and he's trying to help him though, is the sad thing. And evil does not want to speak, Junes. Evil does
Mhm.
not want to speak back. So, and that's kind of like a curse we find out later on in the series too. But it skips to like 15 years later. Um, and there's a really good scene too. Michael basically hijacks the car that Loomis and like a nurse are driving in. We see a good shot of him hopping up on the car and he sticks his hand through the window, like breaks it and kills the nurse and steals that car, that famous car too that we see. And he apparently is a good driver. That's the only flaw with this movie that I have. Like, how did he learn to drive? He killed his sister 15 years later. I don't understand how he learned how to drive.
Well, God, you see that meme with him when he's looking both ways at the intersection. I mean, it's just fucking
Yeah, that is
unintentionally
hilarious.
unintentionally hilarious. I don't know.
Unintentionally. Yeah,
I
yeah,
totally agree though. Like, you wouldn't think that he'd be able to drive, but and actually rewatching
yeah.
this film too, I forget how much we actually do see of his face in this first film. I mean, there was at least two or three good shots of his face. We get a good idea of what he looks like. So it's kind of like,
Hmm.
with the Master Chief and Halo, not seeing the face, it kind of creates that legend of the killer that, when you do see the face, it's like, whoa, wow, I did not know that's what he looked like. It's fucking awesome. But
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's a lot of fun to
yeah.
watch, man.
Adds to the suspense for sure. Another kill that we get, he, kills the mechanic, and that's how he gets his famous outfit as well, or iconic outfit, the blue overalls, the boots. Guy needs something to wear. Um, and then speaking of his outfit, we learned that one of the hardware stores was broken into. He stole like a mask, a rope, and a knife, well, some knives, I think. Um, which is kind of weird too, because why would a hardware store sell masks? But I get it. Um, yeah, and then obviously we get introduced to Laurie Strode, the goat of horror, in my opinion. Jamie Lee Curtis is so damn good. Throughout the decades, I should say, not years, but decades of just how she's like incorporated herself and rooted herself into this franchise and been able to try to raise the bar, I think, in every movie. And her character, obviously the main character, trying to keep Michael's story alive as we've had Carpenter's versions, zombies versions, um, and her ability to just try to be seriously better and better each time, I think. And it only gets harder as you get older. So she is trying to like, maintenance herself and keep up with how gory and how vicious people want Michael to be. So she has to raise her standards too to outperform almost herself for the audience. Just trying to do a good job. Um, June's, what do you think of Laurie Strode herself, or like just Jamie Lee Curtis's acting in general? I know you've seen obviously a whole lot of Halloween movies, but what's your take on her? I mean, I love her, obviously, but
I don't know if she's top five for me, but I do love her as a protagonist. She's a
yeah.
character that's well built. And what I love about this film is the people that seem to be getting killed and offed are the ones that are, partaking in these sexual acts. And, they're having a little more fun. They're going to parties, they're drinking, all that stuff. Whereas you have Laurie, she obviously is a little more reserved. And we've talked about characters like this before. I like seeing a character that is reserved and you don't expect strength from, but when they're put
Mhm.
up against a wall and they're tested, you really see their true strength come out. And that's what really is impressive about Laurie watching her in this film. She handles it all with class. She really does. And some of the stuff she's seen, no normal person would react the way she does. She takes it in, she processes the situation, she analyzes and she reacts. And it's the reaction that she has that allows her to live and escape time and time again from this unstoppable killer, because we've found as the years have gone by, Michael is literally fucking not killable. So the fact that she lives through all this, it's really impressive. And she's one of the strongest characters, and she built a huge legacy for the slashers genre in general. So I love her as a protagonist, a final girl that you can really, hang your hat on. You really got to admire it.
Yeah, no, couldn't have said it better myself. One hell of an actress, but the movie itself here, it kind of, I want to say it doesn't feel like a blur because there's a lot of, there's just different things happening with different characters, whether it's boyfriends, babysitters, them walking from home or walking home from school. But we see Michael a lot. Obviously, he's driving the car, he's stalking, whether it's behind a tree or a bush. So, and you have to kind of put yourself back in that era. I always say that a lot, but like imagine it is 1978 and you're watching this. I think this movie does a great job building his, kind of aura, like his just physical shape, if you will, leading up to, because the movie, it's well that next day, or cutscene, I guess, when it's like 15 years later, it's the next day. But you can kind of see the day ending and winding down, where he's actually gonna, partake in most of his killings. They just do such a great job with his presentation. And he's like, I'm trying to think of the word, like such a minimalist, where whether it's just stalking, eyeing up his prey, but being able to kind of be in Laurie Strode's head in this movie, because there's scenes where she thinks she sees him, he ducks behind something, not there, or that the really famous scene too, where she's in school, she like looks out the window and he's gone. Like she sees him, looks again, like a double take, and he's gone. So it's this psychological part of this aspect being played in a slasher movie too. So it's a lot of suspense building, and then it kind of really vamps up.
The suspense building is so good, and I love this type of
Yeah.
character with Michael. He's intimidating and he gets in your head, but he's not over the top with his kills. I mean, he
Mhm.
does it in a manner that it's slow, and he works towards his victims slowly. And the way he goes about the kill, it's almost like he has a weird level of respect in a way. He wants to look in their eyes and he wants to kill them in a manner that he can be proud of. And I really think he's a character that just the presence, like you said, just so imposing. And when you see him in the corner, you see him outside the school, it's to the point where he's always potentially there. There's scenes when Laurie with her friends is walking down the sidewalk. You're wondering if he's right around the corner. It's
Yeah.
that type of presence when it's in your head as the viewer. That's a successful character that you crafted, that you've put in the movie. And Michael's kills are fucking awesome. Michael does a great job with the kills, and we've seen them kind of evolve over the years. But to have this come out in 1978, it had to be jarring for the audience to see. It had to be crazy, really groundbreaking for the slasher genre.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And this movie, and with the zombies remake, we kind of start getting to my favorite parts of the movie, where it's nighttime now and he's kind of stalking in between these two houses, which I believe it's like the Wallace family. Because I think Laurie's babysitting Tommy Doyle, who is in like Halloween Kills all grown up. So he's one of the survivors. Super, super cool. And I believe it's Annie and Lindsay together as well. Um, but there's like a scene, he like kills a big German Shepherd, it's barking at him, so he's trying to keep himself quiet. And it's really cool too, because there's a scene where Tommy spots him out the window, and like I don't know what his line was, but he's like, I think that's the boogeyman or something. So always referred to as the boogeyman. I should
Mhm.
have mentioned that earlier, but I love how they emphasize that term so much throughout this franchise too, because the boogeyman's coming to get you, and he will find you, and it's gonna take an army to take him down, or what you think you might be able to do with him. But anyway, yeah, I believe that, and there's a few sets of other people in this movie too that we can get into if we want. Um, but I think it's Annie's car he gets into, and it's all fogged up too. This is another classic kill. He's in the back seat and aggressively grabs her head and slits her throat too. So now, and then we're getting into the scenes too, where he's just kind of going back and forth between each house. We see a lot of the kids seeing him, and Laurie actually kind of dismisses them a lot. She's like, "No, what are you talking about? There's nothing out there." And that's when my blood gets pumping too. There's a scene where he's carrying one of the bodies into the house. He just kicks the door open, lights cut off, boom, like nothing was there. And I believe it's Tommy sees this. So I know I'm kind of rambling, Junes. Was there a moment in here where you're like, damn, like like I said, it kind of gets your blood pumping.
I think one of my favorite moments was when he's outside the door. I think it was, I can't remember which one of the friends it was when she was in there doing her laundry and he's outside. And I love the way the curtain, like a linen curtain that you can just barely see through. And you see his figure outside the door, and just the look of him is so fucking frightening. And that's one of those
Yeah.
first moments when I'm like, okay, that actually just kind of spooked the hell out of me. That's a really good moment that was captured. And it's a film that it should last forever. I hope they protect the fuck out of this movie. If the world ends, I hope they keep this movie around because a character like Michael Myers has transcended time in so many ways. And for me, though, that's that first scene when I see him out there, I'm like, okay, there's some fucking spooky shit. And when they time it right,
Right.
he's so goddamn imposing and he's so intimidating. And then obviously once the kills kind of get rolling and we can see that people are more in danger, that's where you really start feeling the heart pump a little bit. He's going from house to house. And frankly, in 2018 with the Halloween from David Gordon Green, I love those opening scenes when you're going house to house, aggressively just getting inside. People don't know where you're at. They're totally taken off guard. Those are the best moments, and that happens time and time again here.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Michael is at the point now, it's just him and Lori. He's killed off pretty much all her friends. The kids were able to get out. And this is where Loomis has pretty much been in the presence of this neighborhood, and he's actually able to kind of pinpoint it down. There's a scene where the kids run out and he just happens to kind of be in the area and they scream bloody murder past him. And he kind of just like looks up and he knows he's in this house. It's so good how they did that. And he's got like a revolver or pistol on him, and Lori and Michael are battling it out. She there's a scene in Halloween Ends too where she stabs him with a knitting pin thing. I don't know what you call it. She does this in this first movie, and then she's actually gets his mask off as well. But she also stabs him with like a metal hanging rod or hanger and gets him in the eye. This is where his mask comes off. There's a split second we can actually see his face, which looking back on it, I'm not that mad about it, to be honest. The franchise does a great job with like keeping his identity all the way, hidden all the way up for the most part till Halloween Ends, where they're able to get his mask off because that's when we learn like that's kind of his power. He's stronger with it on, whatever, whatever. But it's so damn good. And then Michael's missing his stabs on her. He actually ends up cutting her arm, but that's about it. Well, I guess I should mention she fell off a balcony. But they have a nice fight scene, and it's probably 10-15 minutes long. And then going back to Loomis gets involved. Um, and he has some classic quotes in this movie. But he puts like 5 rounds into Michael, if you remember, and he falls off their like patio balcony onto the ground. We see him laying there. Loomis looks over and he's gone. That is one of the most classic shots in horror cinema, in my opinion, is that shot where it's like back down on the ground and it's like poof, like nothing's there. So well done. Laurie and Michael have a lot of fucking good fight scenes throughout this franchise. And this is just the beginning in this movie, and they get better and better. Really played well up into the last trilogy that we've gotten. Um, but yeah, a lot of great kills, a lot of suspense. One of the best slashers, in my opinion, in horror history. You can't ask for a lot better than this. And the way that this franchise develops, pretty damn good. Halloween 2 is considered other people's favorites as well. Halloween 3 is kind of skeptical, and it's kind of a up and down roller coaster. I know June's, me and you have kind of talked about the franchise on the side about what our favorite movies kind of are out of this. But yeah, I mean, what you got? Any final thoughts just on the end scene? Anything I might have missed? Go ahead and throw it in there.
I just absolutely adore the music cue there at that last moment when he sees him missing on the
Yeah.
lawn. I mean, that's watching that for the first time is it's just such a profound scene, and it will last in horror cinema forever. I mean, it's just an amazing moment to have, and the music cue is incredible. I just
Mhm.
love the way John Carpenter goes about establishing his foreground in each shot. I love just kind of being able to have a wide shot, be able to take in all the surroundings, and then you see Michael in the corner. You see Michael's, over the shoulder view, POV looking at the potential victims. All of that is just really well done, and you can tell a lot of the scenes with the Thing as well on the TV when the kids are watching the Thing. It's stuff like
Yeah.
that as a horror fan I just love to see, and I really enjoy having some of that love for the genre and putting some different films like that in those moments. Some just little Easter egg type moments, like the fact that he directed the Thing 4 years later is really cool to think about. So all in all, I think we have a really strong film, and I think people, if you haven't seen it, I don't know how you haven't. I mean, you got to go watch it. And if it's been a while, just freaking rewatch that shit. Halloween's
Seriously.
past us now, but just give it a watch. And I know that the franchise has its ups and its downs, but when you go back and you see where it started, it makes sense that it became what it is today. It's an absolute powerhouse, and I know we're gonna probably have a few down years after Gordon Green's a little bit skeptical ending he had with Halloween Ends. We still have a lot to look forward to for this franchise. I think we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious how they'll actually reboot it up as well, like what they're gonna incorporate to reboot it, the franchise, hopefully. Um, but no, damn good. I think it's almost better too. There's just so much going on now with horror movies nowadays. It's like when you revisit this, it's so simple. It's just
Yeah.
classic. There's just again minimalist things
Mm-hmm.
that this movie provides, but in a good way, not in a bad way. Um, just it's just like times were simpler back then, like in a way, it's just straightforward, just good, so good. You want to get into ratings?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so as our tradition follows, I will give off Rotten Tomatoes score, and then we'll each give our own score and get into that a little bit. So, um, and I've kind of seen this floating around. This isn't news to me. I've seen this before. But it has Rotten Tomatoes has Halloween 1978, a audience score of 89%. Pretty fucking up there. And it's got a critic score of 96%.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
Critics love this movie. They got quite a few reviews on there, obviously. Um, all amazing reviews. I don't know if there's even one bad one in here. Um, but if you got time, it's good to look through these. If you guys, are ever curious about movies, go read the, critics' comments on here. It gives a lot of insight. Um, but June's, I can go first, if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really
Okay.
excited to hear you talk about it because I
So
know.
yeah, I
Please,
mean,
please.
I feel like I've said a lot already. Like I'm gonna say everything again. But when for me, and this is kind of why slasher films are my favorite. It's because they seem the most realistic thing that could actually happen to you. And that's kind of a messed up thing to say, but when you live in a world where things like this have actually happened, where people dress up or there's infamous killers that have actually gone around either, unfortunately murdered, kids, adults, people in general. It's a scary world we live in. And not only do I like Halloween, the holiday, but this movie ties itself around that every single film. They bring back an infamous killer who looks so goddamn good. The storytelling is amazing. The acting is amazing. Jamie Lee Curtis is amazing. I mean, the list goes on, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but I enjoy slasher movies so much because I feel like, and I think you've said this too, June, somewhere, but like, you put yourself in those situations, and that's why a lot of horror fans enjoy it. That fear of like almost like if this was real life, even if it's like sci-fi or something, like it's just like a man, like Alien. Imagine if you're on that ship. Imagine if you're in their place. Like, be so goddamn awesome. Imagine you're Jamie Lee Curtis or one of the other characters, and you're in that environment, like you're living out that. So to be stalked and other things like that, and to be chased is a real thing. It just gets me excited every time I get it. And, not even Michael Myers, other slashers. A lot of these guys on the wall right next to me. So it's a damn good thing to enjoy, to watch, get to experience. So, and taking into account all the other things I've said about the franchise, so damn good. But I will leave room for other possible movies that could beat this. So I am officially giving it a 9.8.
Oh,
So there's 0.1% room for a movie that could potentially surpass this, because I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect movie. So
amazing.
nine,
Amazing score.
9.8. So, and dude, I've always given this, like, in general, like a 9 out of 10 growing
Mhm.
up. Like, and to see critics have it at a 96 is just amazing. And basically call it a 90 for audience. So good. So
There's
I'm
clearly
curious. Yeah,
a high level of respect from the critics for a film like this in the genre, and rightfully
exactly.
so. Rightfully fucking so. You hit some good points, and I love hearing you talk about it. It's a very special movie for us as horror fans, and it really does embody Halloween, and it's the season, man. And when we watch this movie, we are reminded of that season, and we're put into a mindset of Halloween and of fear, killer on the loose, doing what we can to survive, trying to find a way to kill the bad man, the boogeyman. Those are things that we really eat up as horror fans, and that's really what drives us as viewers to these movies. Is that fear of death? We don't want to die. We don't want to get killed by this guy. Is he in the corner? Is he in the closet? I don't know where he's at. He's going to jump out at me, scare the shit out of me in the process. That's what's really amazing about Michael Myers in this film. John Carpenter, the way he goes about the direction is really, really impressive. Like I said earlier, I just love the way he establishes each shot. The camera work is really impressive. He follows each character and each scene really well. He kind of almost like jolts the camera a little bit as he's moving with his characters in each of those scenes. It's really nicely done. And Laurie Strode, when you have a protagonist like this, you can't help but just be drawn to her and want to come back and watch the other films in the franchise. And what it did was so grand at that time, and it built something really, really incredible. And it's just so fun to revisit. There's some decent dialogue, maybe a few corny moments here and there, if I'm being honest, but that's okay, man. This is 1978. Things were different. Dialogue was structured a little differently as well. Characters are going to have different types of interactions with each other because the way they did back in the 70s was different than what we do now. So you're going to have a few things that seem a little off. The few moments with Michael Myers, like we mentioned earlier in the car, looking both ways, just stupid little funny shit like that. That does take you out of the movie a little bit, admittedly, but still, it is an enjoyable watch in so many ways. Building the suspense, money from kill to kill, is what's done really well here, and it works. like you said, we don't see Michael that many times, truly, but when we do, it is impactful and it has a resonating effect on the audience and on the viewers that are watching this film. And the ending for me is what did it in terms of my score. It raised it for me 1 or 2. After rewatching it, I forgot just how fucking good the ending is and just how well it sets this film up for a sequel and for sequels and sequels to follow and reboots to follow. So with some of that being said, and thinking about John Carpenter as well, one of my favorite directors, some of the films he's put out are really good films. So I respect him as a director. I'm going with a flat 9. I'm giving this a flat 9. It deserves it. It really does. Everything here for a slasher fan is what you want. Maybe you don't have as much blood and gore, but god damn it, you don't need that when you got somebody that's as intimidating as Michael Myers is. You don't need the blood as much in this film because he is that good. No character has ever been made quite like this guy. They crafted it beautifully, and I'm just so happy that he exists. I'm so happy this movie exists in society and that we can come back and we can rejoice in the beauties of Halloween and what it did for our community of horror and what it did for the season of October and for Halloween in general. It really is a beautiful thing to go back and look on. And I love hearing you talk about it, Money. I really do.
Yeah. Hell of a score, Junes. That was amazing to hear. You hit the nail on the head there. So I'm glad you're in that 9 and up range. But yeah, because one of the best horror films, probably, maybe ever made by a lot of people would probably agree. But yeah, I think we'll have to drive down to Haddonfield one of these days.
Can you
Just check it
imagine?
out. Just
That
check
would
it
be
out.
so fun. Oh
Wouldn't
my
it?
God. Oh, it'd be so cool, dude.
Yeah, no.
We mentioned that suburban environment make it scary. That's the kind of shit that I like to see. There's some movies out there that have had that type of setting and they do it really well. And for people that grew up in a neighborhood like that went trick or treating on Halloween, man, it just hits different, man.
I know.
It hits us in the heart a little bit, kind of. It brings us back to a simpler time, giving us a simple story, a simple character who goes about in imposing, intimidating ways and kills some people. That makes for some fucking good viewing as a horror fan.
Yes. So, guys, I think that probably wraps it up for us. Thank you again for tuning in. All the support. If you're a follower, thank you. If you're tuning in, thank you. We just enjoy spreading, whether it's stories, our experiences, what we like and dislike, being able to experience this with one of my best friends, a topic that is so dearing and close to us, just to share it. It's so fun to talk horror, and what it brings, the quality it brings, to our lives. It's such a damn good thing to relate to someone with. But Junes, as you know, again, it's been a pleasure. I got nothing else.
I got nothing else either. Been a good
All
time,
right.
brother.
All righty. Guys, hide from the boogeyman. He's coming for you. This has been Scratching the Surface, guys. See ya.